Okay, okay. Because she is a Sutradhar.
Yes. Welcome back. Good morning to one and all present here. We are in conversation with Dr. Sandeep Shastri, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor of Jain University, who is talking to us at the Research Cell of Dayanand Sagar University on the new Education Policy 2020 and its implications. I would like to ask Dr. Banga sir to put his next question, sir.
Sir, I think with regard to research, lot of changes have been brought in. You already said this is basically a disruptive thing that has been brought in, and it is more so in the case of research. Uh, now, those who have completed their four-year degree program can directly register for a PhD. In fact, in IITs and IISc, it has been there for a long time. But in the other universities, completion of a PG program was an eligibility for PhD. Now, how does it work out? In the current scenario, that's what we want to hear from you.
So for me, this policy provides for a combination of innovation and flexibility. You would notice in undergraduate program, there is a provision to step out in first year with a certificate, second year with a diploma, third year with a degree, and fourth year with an advanced degree. So, and as you rightly said, somebody who does a four-year degree has straight entry into a research program. Somebody who does a four-year degree can do a one-year master's program by research and then go on to pursue the PhD. So there are multiple options provided. The policy provides for a one-year master's for those who have done a 4 years degree. The policy provides for a 2-year master's for those who have done a 3-year degree. So I think we are also aligning this with the Western/American system of education so that our students who may want to move there will not really have a challenge. Now, one slight element of unhappiness I had with this policy was the way in which they have immediately abolished MPhil. I personally would have wanted MPhil to continue for a few years until our master's programs became a research-oriented programs. See, for me, the MPhil program was very important for fresh postgraduates because many of our postgraduate degrees do not have a research component at all. The new education policy prescribes that the master's program must have a research component. Once that comes into place, I have no problem with the abolition of MPhil. But I feel for a few years, until the current master's program continues where the research component is very minuscule or non-existent, there was a need for a bridge research program like MPhil. But then going back to the larger question, yes, I think the new education policy provides a very great impetus for research, provides a great premium for research. See, one of the things that the policy says is right from undergraduate education, the research culture, the research component needs to get into the education stream. Our undergraduate students should be exposed to research. Our postgraduate students should definitely be exposed to research. So that research has been given a priority and has been centralized. And also, Banga sir, as you would note, and happily for institutions like Dayanand Sagar and Jain, the new education policy does not now make a distinction between public universities and private universities or central universities and state universities or deemed universities, and none of those distinctions. They are only talking of 3 types of universities. They say a research intensive university, a teaching intensive university, and an autonomous college. Yeah. These are the only 3 categories that they have come up with. A research intensive university where the focus is principally on research with some postgraduate and undergraduate teaching. A teacher intensive university where the focus is on undergraduate education with some element of research. And then of course, a autonomous college where they again have divided it into 2 categories: constituent colleges of a university and wholly autonomous colleges, which would be also degree giving institutions. Now, I know this will take at least 5 to 10 years to fully implement, but I think this process is very, very critical in the whole scheme. And one more point, Dr. Banga, when you did speak about research, I think following the Western example of constituting a national research foundation, I think is extremely important. The policy talks about how in India only 0.69% of GDP goes into research, whereas in countries like South Korea, it is as high as 4.2%. In Israel, it is as high as 4.3%. And the hope is that this National Research Foundation, when created, will not only fund research, it will recognize researchers and also act as a liaison with funding agencies for research. So I think that this threefold role that has been envisaged for the National Research Foundation, to fund research, to act as a liaison with research institutions, and to recognize research talent. I think this is a very important step forward. And my only hope and wish and prayer is that the National Research Foundation should not get caught in any bureaucratic trammels. And the original very lofty objective of a National Research Foundation, I hope, will be fulfilled. And the fact that, the last point, the fact that the National Education Policy says that a lot of the assessment we will do of educational institutions in the days ahead will be based upon the quality of research output that these universities come out with. So this premium for research, or this placing this premium on research, I think is a very, very positive step that this policy has taken. But of course, I will add a caveat. At the end of the day, how do you implement it? Is there going to be dilution in implementation? You all know, you know, I know, when we mandated that every teacher must write X number of articles, or when we said every PhD scholar must have at least 2 publications, it was with a very lofty purpose. But then we know what has happened. Fly-by-night journals have started, people have started publishing anywhere and everywhere. The APA scores become more important than actual performance. So I just hope that challenge does not come up with this very, very good intention of research being given a primacy.
Thanks, sir. In fact, you have also, touched upon the National Research Foundation. I was about to ask a question on that. Anyway, you have already, included in your, answer. Now, over to Dr. Anupama.
Banga sir, I wanted to bring in one more point, which I forgot. Okay. The new education policy says that every PhD student who in all likelihood is going to take up a faculty position somewhere, every PhD student must go through a course on teaching pedagogy. One of the components of the coursework for a PhD student should be teaching pedagogy. Because you see, we always say this, for being a school teacher, you require a B.Ed degree. But for being a university professor, there is no teaching qualification that is prescribed. So I think this point which the new education policy makes, that as part of the PhD program, the PhD scholar should also be trained in teaching pedagogy. In fact, Anupama would know this, that this is something we started 10 years back at Jain, where we brought in skill development as one of the mandatory components of the coursework. And skill development was about this teaching skills of a teacher to actually be developed. And I think now this will have to become a part of all research programs everywhere.
True, sir. Right, sir. A lot of focus on the research aspect, research foundation you have highlighted, and many things going forward, I think is good for our research orientation within the university and the research cell. So we have a very special interest on that. Thank you for highlighting that. I think that will be a major takeaway for all our PhD research scholars, the current and the future. batches. Now, to the last and final segment, I wanted your views on the implementation, yes, as well as the higher education regulation. The bodies now, we have the HECI coming in, wherein we'll have separate verticals for accreditation, standard setting, regulations and all. What are your views on that, sir? How does it pan out?
Again, I would say in theory, this is a wonderful idea which should have come in long back. I think we have had too many regulators and too little meaningful regulation. Many a time, the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. This is how the present system seems to work. Now, what the new education policy has tried to do is try to bring it all under a common umbrella. What you refer to as the Higher Education Council of India, which they want to create, the HECI, will be an umbrella agency. The Higher Education Council of India is visualized as an umbrella agency, under which, as you rightly said, will be 4 very critical verticals. Vertical number 1 will be the National Higher Education Regulatory Council, which I think to a certain extent would be UGC in a new avatar, where the whole question of regulating higher education based on certain norms. And I go back to another term which they use very frequently in their report, that regulation should be right but tight. You see? It should be right but tight. This is a term which comes very frequently in the report. So I think that the National Higher Education Regulatory Council will be for that. Secondly, they say there will be a National Accreditation Council, NAC. And this is very interesting. The present NAC is the one which does the assessment and accreditation. What they are saying, NAC will not be the accrediting authority. They will lay down the guidelines, they will lay down the framework, and the actual assessment and accreditation will be done by bodies certified by the NAC as per parameters fixed by the NAC. So NAC itself is not going to do the accreditation and the assessment. There will be a separate set of institutions which would apply to be the assessors. And they would be trained by the NAC. They would get the guidelines from the NAC and do it, take it forward. That I think is a very, very interesting step towards greater decentralization and making sure that the verticals under the HECI are only broadly regulatory and monetary and do not actually do the implementation themselves. Thirdly, I think this is a branching off of UGC functions. The third body they are creating is what is called the Higher Education Grants Council. Now, you know, the UGC does both the regulation and the grant. So now they are saying that there will be a separate body which looks after the grants which various universities would get. And they want to give that under the Higher Education Grants Council. They have also proposed that grants should be based upon multiple criteria. A critical one among them is the past performance of the university and the past use of funds by the university. So that's the third. And the last vertical is what they call the General Education Council. And the interesting point here about the General Education Council is that under this General Education Council will be all your professional certifying bodies. Medical Council of India, Bar Council of India, your professional, your engineering bodies, all of those would function under the broad guidelines of this General Education Council. So it's not that these other professional bodies have been taken out of the purview. They are there, but they are brought into this larger umbrella under the Higher Education Council of India. And these various professional standard bodies would be under the General Council, the General Education Council. Now, what is my fear? My fear is, will there be some territory management war between these four? You see, will there be a border challenge between these four in terms of what does one do and what does the other do? And this is a typical problem that we have had in the Indian education scenario and also the general Indian administration scenario, that when you create multiple bodies, one body tries to undercut the other body, and one body believes that the other body is playing their role and therefore it should not be there, and everybody would complain to the higher body. So I think there will need to be, now especially because you are creating four verticals, my point would be from day one, there needs to be important clarity on how these four verticals will function. And right from day one, I think that border management and boundary management has to be very, very effectively done. And I would say that a lot will depend upon the type of leadership that the government invests in. Who will be given the leadership responsibilities in these new institutions will be very critical. Somebody was saying, and I'm sorry to use that adage on education, but I think it's appropriate. It should not become old wine in a new bottle with only the cork being different. Now, that shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be looking at only window dressing changes, whereas substantive issues remain the same. It shouldn't be that, if government is looking for a Higher Education Council of India with four verticals, it should not just be that you are going to do a chair swapping of people, you see. That, okay, now this becomes that and that becomes that and that becomes that, and now let's all put our new name boards in place. Now, that's something which should not happen. I think these new verticals that you are creating are with a particular philosophy, are with a particular purpose, are with a particular aim, are with a particular philosophy. And that, I think, needs to be somewhere the underpinning of these bodies. Otherwise, I think the adage of old wine in a new bottle with even the cork not being different would then be the challenge we face.
Yes, sir. I think we've been hearing about that factor also. It's the person or the leader at the helm of affairs. I think that is applicable for all institutions or at every organization level. So the final question, you're a stalwart in the education leadership sector. Are we going to see you somewhere in the implementation of the same in our state, in the national?
I will definitely be implementing this by being an educator, a facilitator who will in spirit implement this. I will do this in my classroom. I will do it in my responsibilities in the administration. And I think there is no dearth of talent in terms of implementing this policy as in terms of regulatory committees. But I think where the real action will be is on the ground. And I would prefer to be a foot soldier who implements it on the ground through the classroom and through institutions, because that's where the real transformation can happen.
Which you've been also doing, which has been your life mission, I think.
So for me, it should not be it should be a seamless transition.
Yeah, but somewhere I think perhaps we see you in the policy making thing. As usual, you're always, your insights are very much in demand and they're always futuristic, and I think it will add lots of value. So today's session we sign off with a lot of insights, I think, in the two segments of the interview that we had for all stakeholders. We would look forward to a further session on issues pertaining to the research aspect and the implementation at a later point in time. Thank you, Dr. Sandeep Shastri, sir, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Jain University, for sparing your time amidst your very hectic schedule to give us the perspectives that we can share with our stakeholders in Dayanand Sagar University and the academic sector about the new education policy 2020. Thank you for your time, sir. I thank Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama. Thank you, Dr. Banga. I think the questions, both the questions that both of you raised forced me to think on these issues, and some of these issues I think maybe I would not have even thought of if you people had not asked me the questions.
Okay, thank you so much for giving that opportunity to us. Okay,
Yes.
sir, thank you so much for taking time off to be
Thank
with
you.
us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Banga sir,
Thank you.
our beloved Dean Research, Dayanand Sagar University. Thank you all for gracing this interview. With regards from the Research Cell, Dayanand Sagar University, we sign off. Have a good day. Thank you.